want to talk about why dating apps, as well as apps such as Bumble BFF, where you can make friends, might actually not be very helpful to a lot of autistic people, myself included. The idea to make this video on a previous YouTube video that I posted about how I've always struggled to make friends as an autistic person. And one person actually commented, well, maybe try Bumble BFF to make friends. And while I understand that their advice was well intended, and I'm not at all trying to criticize this person, if they happen to be watching this, I just I just thought about, back to my experience when I did use dating apps, and I also did use Bumble BFF at one point, and I just didn't find them to be very helpful. And I wanted to open up and talk about why I found these sorts of apps to not be very helpful, and in fact, the opposite of helpful. I know that I can't speak for every autistic person, and I'm sure that there's some autistic people that have had good success with dating apps or Bumble BFF or whatever, and that is absolutely great. For me, however, the way that my autism specifically affects me, I just did not find those platforms to be very helpful for me. In fact, I found them to be pretty overwhelming. And so everyone's different. Just for me and how my autism affects me, those particular apps just didn't help me. I did briefly use Bumble BFF when I was in college to try to make friends. I'm mostly going to be talking about my experience on dating apps because that's what I have more experience with. And dating apps and like friendship apps like Bumble BFF, they obviously kind of work the same way. But like when I was using Bumble BFF, I think what happened was maybe I connected with like one or two people. Like I managed to like message with a couple people, and then maybe we might have even gotten each other's Snapchats, but nothing ever went beyond that. Like we never met up in person or anything. But yeah, I used a lot of dating apps, probably every dating app that you can think of when I was in my early 20s looking to date. Because as an autistic person, I am a big homebody. I don't really like to go out. I don't go out very often, and I also have social anxiety. And so the idea of walking up to someone and having a face-to-face conversation, striking up a face-to-face conversation is very intimidating. And so I didn't count on myself ever meeting a potential romantic partner in the traditional sense. Like how some people meet their partners at a bar and they'll like walk up and talk to them. I knew that that wasn't going to happen for me. So I decided to try dating apps because I thought, oh, this is a little bit less intimidating, being able to meet someone and be able to message with them instead of have a face-to-face conversation. But actually, I found that dating apps were just as ineffective as me hoping that I would actually meet someone randomly at some bar or some shared environment. Talk about what would happen specifically for me when I would use dating apps, and then I'm going to get into reasons why dating apps can actually be ineffective for autistic people. But when I would use dating apps, I guess I have what people refer to as pretty privilege. Like I'm a conventionally attractive person, so people would initially be attracted to me based off of my appearance. I had pictures of myself, obviously, so they liked what I looked like and they would swipe right on me. So I had no issue as much getting matches. But what I had problems with was getting the relationship to go beyond just messaging. Is I feel like these apps, like that's the first thing. I feel like these apps rely a lot on your ability to make small talk and make conversation, which is probably my biggest weakness as an autistic person. It depends a lot on that small talk, because before anything goes anywhere, before you actually meet up with the person or go on a date with them, they have to be impressed with the conversation that they have with you. And it's a lot of small talk, which I find just very overwhelming and just exhausting, matching with so many different people and having all these different conversations that start out as, what do you do for work? What do you like to do in your free time? And that sort of thing. And again, I'm bad at conversation. I'm not good at navigating that sort of thing. And keeping a conversation going. Like, I don't know what to say next. I don't know what to, like, how to transition the conversation from one thing to the next. I don't know that stuff. And so I kind of, in a lot of these situations, I would hope that the other person would kind of more take the lead, and I would be able to kind of follow them in some way. But what often happened is that the the other person that I would match with, they would eventually realize that I was socially awkward and that, this conversation isn't flowing very well. So they would just stop talking to me and things wouldn't really go anywhere. So that was often the problem that I would experience, is just the fact that these dating apps, again, it's dependent on your ability to make small talk. If you're not very good at small talk or making conversation in general, you're going to fail on these dating apps. And that's what happened with me. I've found that was difficult about these dating apps was just like how overwhelming it was when you would match up with people, and that like you would have to strike up conversations with them. Again, I haven't used dating apps in a while. So I don't quite remember exactly how some of them work. I know a lot of them is like the other person strikes up the conversation, like the guy is supposed to start the conversation. And then there's some where I think, you are supposed to start the conversation. Again, I can't remember how each of them work. But like whenever it was on me, when the ball was in my court to start the conversation, it was just really hard because I just didn't know what to say. And again, like you have to make a good first impression on them, and you don't want to say anything like that they would perceive as too boring. Like if I just say, "Hi, how are you?" I feel like they would think that that's boring and they wouldn't really want to engage in more of a conversation. But beyond that, so it's like, it's really hard. I'm not good with like pickup lines or whatever. Um, like that makes it really hard. And then again, like being able to keep the conversation going, like when the other person would say something, then you would have to say something. Because if I remember correctly, a lot of these dating apps, like you would have 24 hours to respond, and if you didn't respond, you guys would unmatch or something. And so like I'd be like, I don't know what to say next. Like I don't know what to say. I could talk about my cat, but I'm sure that this would drive this person away if I did that. And then let's talk about the next thing. And that is that I feel like the pressure to mask is even more greater in these type of situations than it would be meeting someone like at some activity or something that you are both a part of. At least for me, when I was on these dating apps and I would match with someone and we would talk, I felt this need to continue to make a good impression on them. And I had this mentality of, don't mess this up. I didn't want to say or do anything that would drive that other person away. This is a big issue for me when I actually did end up in a relationship with someone that I met through a dating app. Um, and the whole time I was in this relationship, I never really opened up to the person. I never really felt like I could be myself because I felt like I had to keep up a fake image. I was worried about them not liking me if I said anything or did anything that may have turned them off. And so I was just very guarded and not myself around them and just kind of would shut down around them. I didn't vocal stim around them. I didn't really do anything. I tried not to talk about my cat as much. Um, and, normally I'm a very shy person, and it takes a certain kind of person to, for me to really open up to someone. And, I'm not, it's hard for me to really open up to people, but I have a few select people that I am more comfortable around, and I will be myself. I will stim. I will do other things that I might not do around certain people. I never felt that way around this guy. We dated for a year and a half, and every single time we went on a date, we did some sort of outing, I dreaded it because I knew that it was just going to be masking the entire day. That I was going to be, having my guard up the entire day, and that was exhausting. I wouldn't be able to take a break or whatever. With this specific guy that I met on this dating app, he at some point even planned a trip for us to go to Florida right after I graduated from college. And I was dreading this trip the entire time. As time came closer for us to go on this trip, I was dreading it. I didn't want to go. And at first I didn't know why I didn't want to go. I was like, I've never been to Florida. This like, I should be looking forward to this, you know? Um, but I wasn't looking forward to it. I was dreading it and I didn't want to go. As we were getting closer, I was trying to just suck it up and push myself to just get through this. But it came to be the day before the trip, and I was just like, I really don't want to go on this trip. I really don't want to do this. The reason that I didn't want to go was because I knew that it was just going to be a masking fest. you know, um, it wasn't going to feel like a vacation. It was going to feel like quite the opposite of a vacation, where I was going to be alone with this guy for an entire week. And I was going to have to spend that entire week masking and not being myself. And I just didn't have the capacity to do that and didn't want to do that. It's one thing to go on a date for a few hours and mask for a few hours, but to have to do it for an entire week and, not get a break, like we were going to be staying in an Airbnb together, and so I didn't want to do this. So I bailed at the last minute, and I low-key feel a little bit bad because he paid for the Airbnb, he paid for the plane tickets. He spent a lot of money on this. I believe he was able to get like some kind of credit, airline credit for the plane tickets. But for the Airbnb, since we canceled at the last minute, I think he was just able to get a partial refund. So he was out like a lot of money for this, and I feel bad. But I just didn't want to go. But I ended up making, I didn't tell him the truth. I just made the excuse of COVID and the fact that I had just started my first full-time job, because this was at the beginning of 2022. So mask mandates were still a thing. This was right after holiday travel, and also during the time when there was a lot of staffing shortages at many airlines. And so a lot of flights were being canceled because of staffing shortages. There was just also a lot of like risk of getting COVID, because like cases were really going up at that time. And again, I had just started my full-time job. And so I was already kind of, they were already kind of being a little generous, letting me take a week off of work when I was only like 2 or 3 weeks into the job. And so I just kind of told them, yeah, I don't feel comfortable going on this trip at this time because I don't want to risk possibly getting COVID and then having to take even more time off of work or getting stranded. So that was my excuse as to why I didn't go, but I never told him the real reason. But this relationship didn't last very long. We broke up after a year and a half. And I remember he actually broke up with me over a text message. And one of the things that he said in the text message to me was that you and I seem more like friends than we seem like a couple. And that definitely resonated with me because like we never grew that close to each other. I felt so guarded the entire time. And so for me, I think that that's another reason why like dating apps were not helpful, because there was just this I guess pressure of I have to continue to leave a good impression on them. And if I be my full self, they might not like that, because I was always used to being an autistic person, being used to people not liking me, people thinking I'm weird and quirky. And so I didn't want to possibly do anything, And I know some people are like, why did you stay in this relationship if you didn't like this person that much or you didn't enjoy being around them? And I think that it had a lot to do with the fact that I thought I would never be able to meet anyone else. So I didn't think there was anything else better out there for me, let alone anything else. And so I thought, I'm willing to settle for this, if it means I won't be single for the rest of my life, I'll settle for this, even if I'm not really that happy. And, I'm glad the relationship didn't work out, because by now, if we were still dating, we would probably be married and maybe even have kids by now. And I would be having to live with this person every single day that I just didn't feel that comfortable around, felt like I had to be guarded around. And I'm glad it didn't work out because I feel like that really would have burned me out having to do that. If I couldn't even go on a trip with him, I don't think I would have been able to handle living together with this person. But yeah, that's just my spiel about dating apps as an autistic person and why they just don't really work for someone like me. You know, the fact that you have to be good with conversation and you have to know social cues. You would think dating apps would be a great tool for someone like me, but they really aren't. You know, unless you, like I said, are a small talk expert, they're not a very good tool. And a lot of us autistic people are not small talk experts. And then just, you know, that pressure to mask. I feel like, you know, what would be more effective for a lot of us is just kind of just naturally meeting someone. And again, with the autistic only spaces, you know, having autistic only spaces would be a good solution and just kind of naturally meeting someone, like not really expecting a relationship or anything to come of it, just naturally meeting them, I think is more effective than some dating app. But yeah, that's what I have to say about dating apps when you're autistic. Feel free to comment down below your experience with dating apps and what you think, if they helped you or if they didn't help you. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. And if you did, if you could please subscribe and help me out. And comment any other ideas down below for videos you would like to see, topics you would like to see me talk about, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.